What does it mean to live a resilient life? I'm Ryan Mannion. I lost my brother to war and my mom to cancer, and I've learned a lot about myself along the way. Now, as the CEO of Travis Mannion Foundation, I'm on a journey to explore what it means to be resilient against life's many challenges. Join me and some incredible guests as we ask ourselves the hard questions and define what it means to struggle well. All right, we're kicking it off with another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. I have Christian Schauf with us here today, founder of Uncharted Supply Company. And I was doing some research, Christian, and, you know, obviously I was excited to bring you on and talk a little bit about emergency preparedness and all of that. But I was listening this morning. I caught some of your Catch Penny performances.
Oh, jeez.
Some old YouTubes.
That's it feels like a fat baby picture these days. That's a long time ago. Definitely a fun chapter of life, though.
Yeah. Well, what's cool is I saw you went to Berklee College of Music, and my first cousin went to Berklee. And she's a musician down in Nashville now, so I was super familiar with that. And but I'd love to talk about that a little because, so you're in this band, and for those that don't know, like Berklee College of Music, it's where you go if you're serious about music, you know?
Well, to be clear, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I got 2 degrees there, and then I did online education with Berklee. So I've never set foot there, but I did, get a degree there. So, I just want to be clear and not pretend I'm John Mayer or something like that.
There you go. Okay. So, do you have your band before you go to Berklee or vice versa?
I had the band first.
Okay.
So it all started with a broken leg playing football in high school. And we didn't really, I'm aging myself, but it wasn't like you'd sit on the internet all day or look at your phone. You didn't have a smartphone. So I bought a guitar and a Beatles easy chord book. And I played a lot of instruments, but I always want to learn how to play guitar. And so I just started teaching myself, and my brother kind of did too. And I had some friends and we'd all get together, and we started playing like in the garage and then at local bars. And I always said I would keep playing as long as it kept progressing. And it just kind of kept going for like a decade.
Yeah.
So it was never like an intentional thing where I was like, I'm amazing, I'm going to be a big musician. It just, usually when I get into something, I do it as hard and as fast and as well as I can. And, we ended up going to record an album. We met the guys that, worked with Prince. They took us under their wing. It's just one thing led to another. And all of a sudden I was like, we're like doing the national anthem at a NASCAR race in front of 176,000 people. And it's like, well, that escalated quickly,
And, so you were, this was like the video I caught was from 2007. You kind of had you kind of had like the grunge vibe, Gin Blossoms look going on there, right? You had the hair hanging in the face.
We toured a lot with the Gin Blossoms.
Oh, well, there you go. I was on the money.
I mean, I'm like sweating right now as you talk about it because it's almost embarrassing anymore. But look, I'm a farm kid. I grew up listening to country music and like classic rock stuff. And we got to a point where there were some record labels interested. And my producers and the guys kind of working with us were like, you guys need to look the part, and we need to make this album sound like, like the All American Rejects or something. Yeah. So the next thing you knew, it was like a pop rock thing. And I guess I didn't have enough confidence back then to be like, no, this isn't really who I am.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, yeah, sounds good. Like, let's do it. And
for the time,
for a while.
Yeah, I mean, for the time, you were what was popular, so it worked.
Yes, yeah. But everybody had the same wardrobe and the same haircut.
Yeah, a hooded sweatshirt, zip up, and hair hanging in your face. I did chuckle when I was watching it today. I'm not gonna lie. But you guys were good. But the cool thing about oh my gosh, I'm sorry. But you guys ended up doing, which I thought was so cool. You did over 40 tours to Iraq and other conflict zones, touring for the troops.
I did 39 trips,
Okay, 39.
150-ish shows with our group, but then we ended up kind of controlling a lot of the entertainment through the Department of Defense to send other bands over. So I always want to be really clear. I was never in the service. Like everybody listening, thank you for support. Like it's something I wish I would have done. I didn't. I always want to make sure that I'm not, crossing the lines there in any way. But we were playing at South by Southwest one year, which is a big music festival in
Yeah.
Austin, and a couple dudes with like high and tights came up and asked if we wanted to go play in Kuwait and Iraq, and we were like, yeah, that sounds great. And one thing led to another. What really happened is my brother Zach and I figured out how to fit a PA system into a Blackhawk, which allowed us to go to all these like forward operating bases that didn't have landing strips because they had so much gear they'd had to fly everywhere. Well, we figured out how to drop in with a helicopter, and then they were like, this is great. Like, how much can you bring us? And it just kind of became our focal job for like the better part of a decade.
I thought that was so cool. And I was totally wondering, I'm like, how do you go from, just being touring musicians to ending up in Iraq? So you got found by maybe some Marines over at South by Southwest.
Yeah, it was through Armed Forces Entertainment, which is run through the Pentagon.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
People always think it's USO. USO is a civilian organization. Armed Forces is kind of a part of the budget with the DoD. And yeah, we just, for me, it was like, if we can do this and we can be helpful, we'll just keep going until they don't want us anymore.
Yeah.
And, we played a bunch of shows. We took the Spin Doctors over and Hoobastank and some of the members of the Pussycat Dolls. And we did a thing called Bikes Over Baghdad. We build skate parks at the bases, and I brought all the X Games guys, and we do shows. And so, it was just always trying to figure out what was going to put smiles on people's faces and help them kind of forget where they were for a few hours. And, most of those shows ended up just being like covers, like cover songs. And like if somebody in the crowd could play guitar, like we'd get them up on stage. We let people stage dive. Like it was never like, hey guys, like, come listen to my music. It was kind of like, let's have a party, like a house party, and have some fun with it.
Well, and I think
it was a magical time in life. I'm really thankful we got to do it, and it really shaped a lot of who I am today.
Yeah, I think that, people don't realize that morale boost for troops it's essential. I have a friend who his last stint in the Marine Corps was the liaison taking NFL cheerleaders overseas. And that was his job. And he was like, listen, like they love it. This is what you got to bring some fun. You got to bring some excitement, something light, I used to send my brother Playboys and, whiskey in boxes, you got to do something to keep the morale going over there.
I never understood the cheerleader things. That just felt like you were like dangling a steak in front of a lion's cage.
That's true.
Like,
that's true.
Like, man, is that helping or is that just getting people really spooled up? But I'll tell you a funny story. On our first trip over, we did a bunch of shows in Kuwait, and then we went up into Iraq, and we flew in a couple Ospreys out to a place called Camp Korean Village, which was, I think it was like on the Iranian border. They'd never had a band. We got there. They had a flatbed trailer that we were going to play on. And we didn't know what was going on. We were just like saying yes to everything. And next thing you know, we're sitting there in the DFAC, and it hit me that it was like a band of 5 guys that had showed up to sing for like 500 totally sober guys in the desert. Yeah. And I'm like, this is not good. This is really awkward, right? Like, what are we going to do? So, we found a cooler full of like non-alcoholic beers. We put them up on the stage, and all of these guys, kind of circle around a little judgy. I could see in their eyes, like, who are these clowns showing up to sing for us? And I just handed out the beers, and we started the show with a beer fight. We just shook them up and sprayed everybody. And then we had the highest ranking officer come up on stage and stage dive into the crowd. And then we got one of the guys who could play guitar to come up and play a song. And it just turned into a party. You know, everybody was just yelling out requests. And if we could kind of fudge it, we would. And that was a really magical day because it helped me kind of figure out like how to solve that puzzle, right? And just let these guys have fun, because that's what it was all about. I always said, we weren't cowboys. We were kind of like rodeo clowns. Like, we were out there, but we weren't on the bulls. So It was fun. A lot of great memories. I spent my 30th birthday in one of Saddam's bedrooms in the JVB. I mean, we got to fly in all sorts of cool stuff and shoot all the big guns, and amazing chapter in life.
Yeah,
for sure.
that's so cool. So you go, and it was hard for me to find the transition between where Catch Penny ends and, you know, your next stint arrives. So why don't you kind of share the fade out to the band? And I mean, is the band still touring? Are you guys still?
No, we haven't played in a while. I mean, I play on my couch once in a while.
You don't get the band back together, you know, just for.
No, I mean, I don't think it would go well. That's a muscle that you have to. I mean, to be good, you have to practice, and you have to have your voice in shape and make your hands move on the guitar correctly. It'd probably be like, you know, putting Brett Favre behind center or something. Like, it'd probably be pretty ugly. As much as everybody would want it to be some miraculous thing, but no, I mean, the way it happened was, the more we did these shows, we kept trying to figure out how to make them bigger and better. We started working with brands like Harley Davidson, GoPro, Fox Racing. You know, all these guys would donate a bunch of product, and we'd have kind of programs at the events. So all the troops would get a GoPro camera on one tour. On one tour, we gave a Harley Davidson away. We gave leather jackets away, shirts, you know, just trying to make it better.
Yeah.
And it was actually really good for the brands. So when all the military stuff kind of died down, those same brands came back to my brother and I and asked us to essentially help them with other marketing ideas. So I ended up doing a lot of marketing work for several brands for a while. Cool. I took a job with one of them out in Southern California for a few years. And frankly, it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I didn't enjoy it. And I decided that whatever my next move was going to be, I wanted it to be like a big one, and something that was kind of, I don't want to say my life's work, but something that I could really spend some time on and build. I'd always wanted to build an outdoor brand. I just have always been an outdoors person. And, you know, going from being around military guys a ton, where it's very team oriented and everybody's capable and willing to help and they have the equipment, and growing up on a farm that's kind of the same.
Yeah.
You know, moving to Newport Beach, California, where everybody just assumed somebody else was going to fix something or an app was going to fix it, was really abrasive to me. It just really struck me. And so while I was out there, it just kept crossing my mind, like, if something big happens, like, nobody's going to know what to do out here. And how do you fix that? Like, how do you create meaningful change at scale that would make our world safer and create helpers and create heroes situations versus, you know, everyone locking the doors and hiding and waiting for somebody else to come around? And that's really just what took me down the path of starting Uncharted.
So I had seen that you had actually seen something was it a natural disaster in California?
Oh, well, yeah, the story the PR team pushed out for a few years.
Oh, okay.
It was the moment where I really was like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I was driving from Newport Beach to Steamboat Springs, Colorado to go skiing, and I had just gotten into the mountains of California, and it had snowed a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we were stuck. Like, people didn't have the right tires. They were sliding off the road. There were people in flip-flops, freezing. And I was so confused because it wasn't even slippery. You know, it was just, to me, it was a non-issue, but it really, really affected kind of all these people around me. And it made me realize, gosh, like, there needs to be a solution for this for people that don't have these experiences. And so that was really, like, that weekend I remember being like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go in. And that was kind of the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, I would say, to make me, you know, dump my life savings into this idea and go for it.
So I will tell you, like, candidly, never ever thought about what to do in emergency situation. You know, I am one of those people that I'm like, if something happens, you know, there's other people that are going to be able to solve it. It was really when kind of COVID hit that isolation happened. And I was like, wow, at the end of the day, like, you're on your own, and you have to, like, figure things out. And I used to think about, like, these doomsday preppers, for better lack of a word, like, oh my God, these people, they're stockpiling food and supplies and all this crap. Yeah. And I thought it was crazy. I'm like, we're never going to be in a situation like that. And, you know, I've totally changed my entire mindset, but I also didn't know where to go, right? So until I learned about your company, there didn't, for me, seem to be this, like, one-stop shop. So I would, like, piecemeal things together. Like, someone, you know, it's like, well, you need clean water. So, you know, I've got, like, water filtration straws like that you can pump in my basement. It's like, if all else fails, I'm going to have clean water. I got some guns. But beyond that, I'm like, all right, I have guns and clean water.
Those are two great things to
Okay.
have, though. I mean, if you're gonna pick two, water and guns will take you a long
All right. Well,
ways.
I've got two out of I don't know how many more I should have, but like that's kind of, and so, looking through what you do, it's like you just make it easy, right? It's just.
Well, I'll say this. I think some of it is crazy. I don't consider myself a prepper. I don't have a bunker full of things. Even COVID, we were being asked to stay in our homes where we have everything at our disposal.
Yeah, sure.
What I think is important is that you have the ability to just sustain and stay away from maybe an epicenter of some bad stuff going on for a reasonable amount of time until things settle down. But, when those things are happening, the last thing you want to do is inject yourself in a situation like that.
Right.
So for me, I always go back to like the 72 hours thing. 95% of survival situations are resolved in 72 hours. So what that means is you don't need a year's supply of food. You just need a couple days worth to get by. And if you do that, I think you're in a really good spot. So I've never been one to tell people you need to dig a hole and bury a bunch of gold and everything else. It's a little more like, have this stuff in your car. If you're in California and the 405 is backed up and you're not getting home that night and it gets cold, like, can you stay warm and you have water and you have a way to communicate and a way to hear what's going on? And just a few little things can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So for me, it's being logical about it. And the other part of it is, like I said, creating heroes and helpers out of this. If you've got a good first aid kit in your car and you come across an accident and you can help somebody out, those are the type of people we need in the world, right? We need people that are going to go and take care of others and not just drive past or say, sorry, I don't have any way to help. Like, if we can do that at scale, I think we make a better country and a better world. So again, our goal has been to curate products and give people a solution, a completely thought out solution, much like your situation. When I talked to people, everybody acknowledged they needed something, but didn't know where to go, didn't know where to start, didn't know what they needed. And so that was kind of where we started. It's like, why don't we start curating expertly designed and constructed kits that check the box at a reasonable price that everybody can afford, that will really make a difference when push comes to shove. So
yeah, I saw recently at Costco that they have different to yours, but it's food survival kits. So it's it's a box this big and it's like 6 months of food. And I've passed it and I'm like, should I get that? And I'm like, no, you don't need that. You don't need that. But do you think that the general public is largely unprepared for the pace and scale of today's emergencies with natural disasters and, social unrest and all of that?
Big time.
Yeah.
I can tell you that since 1980, which is the year I was born, $1 billion natural disasters have grown 15% year over year. So 15% every year for almost 45 years.
Wow.
That's not talking about COVID or like what's happening in LA today with the protests or the riots or whatever you want to call it. That's not car accidents. I just think that we are living in a world that's more and more kind of, I don't know if fragile is the right word, or volatile.
Yeah, for sure.
I think what we have is we have a population of people who have lived in a very calm time on Earth where nothing bad has happened. Mm-hmm. And they just assume that that's going to be the way it always is. And that is the way it is until it's not. And so it's more about, being proactive than being reactive for people. It's like, I talk to people like, well, it's never happened to me. Well, you're lucky. And I would bet money that something will happen at some point. So you're either going to be ready for that moment or you're going to, roll the dice and try to figure it out in the moment with limited resources. And I know if you're a father or a mother, if you've got elderly parents you're taking care of, you're going to want to show up and know what to do and know you have the right tools and experience. So I do worry about our society, that it's been kind of too safe for too long, and it's made people apathetic to what can happen. I do believe that. And I think there's no better community than the military that understands this, because most of these guys and girls have had the training. They've seen what can happen. They've had the proverbial, close call, and all it takes is one of those experiences to make you go, gosh, next time I'm going to make sure that, I've got what I needed, because that was darn close. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a mindset that I'm trying to shift, and carry the flag on in this country and hopefully beyond.
Yeah, I remember, Travis always used to have like random things, like wherever he went, he had a transistor radio and like, just like stupid stuff like that, where I was like, that's so unnecessary. But it was just, there were the little things that it was just part of like what was with him wherever he was living. And, Sean over here, we were talking before, our producer, and he's completely unprepared for any emergencies or natural disasters. And he volunteered. He just said that I can eat him if something strikes, because he's not going out of his way to be prepared for anything. So, you got people like that too.
A lot of my military buddies just say all they need is like, enough bullets, and they can acquire whatever they need pretty quickly. So,
well, that's how I was just like, all right, I've got a lot of wildlife in my backyard. I don't know how good of a shot I am, but if I have the guns, I'll be okay. When you look at like, there's obviously being prepared in an emergency situation with supplies, but there's also having the skill sets, right? Like, you can have guns, but you got to know how to shoot your guns. You got to know what to do with the guns, things like that. What is one emergency skill, not item, but skill, that you think everyone should know, and why?
It's hard to say one. When we were on Shark Tank, Lori said, "What's the most important piece of your kit?" I said, "Tell me what the emergency is."
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody's got an injury, the first aid is the most important thing.
Yep.
You're going to want to have. If you're starving, being a good shot out to 600, 700, 800 yards is probably the most important thing. So it depends. These skills, I think of them as life skills. It's why I like camping and hunting and, driving the side-by-sides around and doing all those things, because all those things lead back to the skills you need in a situation like this. That's a hard one to answer. And I do believe that training is always the best answer. The problem is most people don't ever take the time and invest in getting the training and keeping it up to date and continue to practice. I mean, even like tourniquet training, like, there's probably a lot of people that think they need a tourniquet that have never put one on. And then there's probably another group of people that have done it once, and it was like 5 years ago in school or in some class. And you should be doing it every couple months as quickly as you can as a refresher, just to make sure in that moment, when seconds count, you know what you're doing, right? And it's that way with a lot of these skills. So the challenge for us was, can you create products that could guide people through a situation when they don't have training? And, all of our products have step-by-step instructions. Everything's color coordinated to help you kind of navigate a situation when adrenaline's pumping and you're kind of tunnel vision. But that's a hard one. There are, a smaller and smaller group of people, in my opinion, every decade, that have those, call it life skills, that you're going to need in a situation like this. My dad was a farmer. He can do a lot of stuff because he was never a survivalist.
Yeah.
But growing up on a farm and living on a farm, you learn a ton of things. I mean, whether it's changing a tire or shooting an animal or, tying something up, like those are skills that people that live in, call it New York City, and have a marketing job don't have the reps on. So it's an interesting time in the world, I think, where I wish people would get more into this. That's kind of my goal, is to encourage people to get there. But at the same time, if I'm going to bet my money, I'm going to bet that most people want to throw money at us at something to make that idea, like to check a box.
Yeah.
And they're not going to invest the weekend to go training. And so, that's tough. Like this weekend, Bill Rapier's coming. He's staying at my house. He's doing some training. I don't know if you know Bill, but he was a DevGru guy. And I took one of his classes last year, and I'm doing it again. And it's intense. It's 2 days of like a lot of shooting and a lot of grappling around. But boy, do I feel more confident when I leave those classes, as a refresher.
Totally.
So I wish more people were doing that.
I did a multi-day hike in Colorado with a Marine in September, and it was all land nav exercise. And it was just me and a map and a compass, and he knew where we were going, but if we were going the wrong way, he wasn't going to tell me. And I don't know if I will ever need to use that protractor again in my life no Garmin's, nothing. But I felt so empowered where I was like, shit, like I can get us from point A to point B with a map and a compass. And I know how to do that now. I don't know if I'll ever need to use it again, but I feel stronger because I know how to do that.
Well, I always tell people you don't want the first game you play to be the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Like people don't do anything and then boom, your life depends on it and you have no reps. It's a really bad situation to be in. And, God willing, that never happens to anybody, but it does. It does happen. Things happen. So the fact that you even have that training and you've seen it once puts you light years ahead of if you'd never done that.
Yeah.
And that's how I think about this stuff. It's like, even if you're just, going out for a hike in the woods and put your phone away and see if you can figure it out and then look at your phone if you get lost. Just do some things.
We have all the devices that you can if you get into the jam. But I think a lot of it is like we're just such a comfortable society. But at the end of the day, the same challenges are going to arise. And we are just kind of in a lot of ways wholly unprepared for them because
I agree.
Yeah. So, my son asks me sometimes if he can sleep out in the backyard and by himself. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Go sleep out in the backyard by yourself,
He's going to figure out how to stay warm. He's going to figure out.
He typically comes in, Christian. I'm not going to lie. He doesn't, but I'm always like, you want to sleep in the backyard? Go ahead. He doesn't really he's only 11. He hasn't made it through the night, but, we have a lot of wildlife out there, but I'm always encouraging it. Like, yeah, go. Like, put the devices down and get outside,
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really good.
Obviously your kits are designed with everything you need, and you've got all different versions of them. But if outside of that, and I know I asked you about skill, but if you could think of one essential, maybe two essentials that every household should have.
Everybody always likes to go to food. The reality is the human body doesn't need food for 3 weeks before it's a life or death situation.
Yeah.
Right. They always say air, shelter, water, food is the order of priorities. So can you breathe? That probably isn't the question you're asking here, but do you have oxygen? Right.
Yeah.
And then, shelter. If it's 30 below zero out here in Park City and you better get shelter fast because your core temp's or you're in the desert, right? You got to find a way to maintain life and keep temperatures correct. and then it's water. Water is life. If you've ever been somewhere where you're out of water and it's not coming for a while, it's a really bad feeling. So, I've been on elk hunts where I've had to, cut an elk up in New Mexico and it's 100 degrees out and pack it out and I'm out of water and it feels dangerous. Your body's like alarm systems are going off. So, that's really the rule of threes and what we think about. The only thing I would add there is self-protection or a firearm and knowing how to use it. Take a class, whether it's a single female or a family or whatever. I do think being able to protect yourself, being able to get food if you need it, there's a lot of value that comes in just knowing that you can protect yourself and having that peace of mind and being able to acquire the resources with it. So that wasn't a one or two thing answer, but
you kind of answered that the two things that I have are it. So there you go.
That's where I was going.
I win.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Like if you were like grab two things and go, I'd be like, give me my rifle and a way to procure water, and I can probably figure the rest out.
There we go. All right. I'm all set. Have you ever, again, I think one of the things that I always think about, and I always talk about, the work that I do with the Travis Manning Foundation is so rewarding because I wake up every day and I'm running a business and, we have 100 employees and 8 offices across the country. Wow. But at the end of the day, I get to wake up and have a purpose and a passion for what I'm doing. And not everybody gets that. And some people have to find out that outside of their day job. But I imagine that you feel a lot of that with the work that you do and I'd love to know if you've ever heard like a story of someone that's, used one of your packs and, saved their life or, a cool story as a result of that.
A lot of purpose, a lot of passion behind what we're doing. I feel like I'm doing what God put me on earth to do. I feel like if we achieve our goals, we're leaving the campsite better than we found it.
Yeah.
And preparing people and maybe, like I said, making heroes and helpers out of people, and changing the world that way. Like that is truly my goal. This has been harder than I've ever imagined, with just building a business and all the things that come with product and supply chain and margins and marketing and everything else. It's been a grind.
Yeah.
But we're growing, we're getting there. I'm really proud of the business. And so I love what I wake up and get to do every day. What was the second part of your question? You had asked.
Is there any cool stories that?
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, there's probably not a week that goes by where I don't get 2 or 3 text messages from people where somebody's got a gash and my first aid kit laying next to it. What happens a lot of times, we have these battery jump starters that also are air compressors, and car things happen a lot. Dead batteries, flat tires. Those products save people's butts all the time.
Yeah.
My favorite recent story, we got an email from a guy I don't know, a dad. He sent his daughter to college in the Carolinas when those hurricanes hit. And he sent her off with one of our 72 survival kits, and she put it in her closet. And I guess when she was moving in, she was telling her friends that her dad, was a warrior, and that was his like end of the world kit. And they kind of laughed at it lovingly. And then the hurricanes hit, and from what he told us, that her whole floor of her dorm used that water filter to get water for several days.
Wow.
It has a crank battery charger in it. They were charging their phones with that. They were using the radio to see what was going on. They used the flashlight, the gloves, the hats. Like they literally used, most of that kit, and it was used by, as he put it, her entire floor. So, I wasn't there. I don't know exact details, but he was super thankful. She was, beyond impressed that her dad had thought of that for her and gotten her. And she got to save the day, right? She got to be the hero on the floor and had everything they needed in that backpack. So it's stories like that I really love. That said, I think a lot of times what happens with us is it doesn't become life or death because people have the tools to fix something quickly and get out of there, right? It doesn't turn into this life or death thing because you can patch up an injury, or you can make a call, or you can get water when you didn't have it, and then you're okay.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of changing these like potentially catastrophic things into inconveniences. And that's really, it's probably bad marketing because we don't get these big dramatic stories, but it's actually the best outcome.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I love that. I think, gosh, every parent that's sending their kid off to college, sending them with one of those, like what a great idea, I love that. What do you right now think our greatest risk is? Like you're looking at, we've got these riots. I'm not going to call them protests. They're riots happening out in LA.
Call them riots too, just to be clear. Sorry, I misspoke.
No, it's well, you said riots, protests. Like I'm watching the footage today. They're riots.
Like riots.
Yeah, feels like riots. Yeah. But you've got that. You had the wildfires out in LA too. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're just getting hit hard. But like the hurricanes in the Carolinas, like there's just so many different things. And then obviously we have all of these different international threats that are happening right now. I don't know. For me, the world feels like a scary place right now. It really does.
Well, statistically, the world is still safer than, almost any other time in history. That said, I don't think it's as safe as it was, call it 20 years ago. I think that we, I always say like the Amazon Prime going from one day to a couple days was like the canary in the coal mine, right? It feels like we kind of like peaked as a society, and now it's like, oh, things aren't going to be like, you might not get avocados for a few days, which is not a big deal. But when you start taking a big step back and going, well, what's really happening here with supply chains? And it's getting interesting for sure. I always say that COVID was like chapter 1 in a new book. I don't think it was a one and done. I think our world's changed. And I think if you think everything's going back to the way it was, I think you're being dishonest with yourself. So to answer your question, I would say this. Um, Natural disasters are a real threat, but they're somewhat predictable because they're seasonal. You know when hurricane season is, you see a hurricane coming. Wildfires don't instantly cover 100,000 acres. There's a spark, and you have time to react.
Yeah.
Those things, to me, as long as you have the right stuff and you're being thoughtful about it, you can mitigate those and navigate around and get out of town or whatever you have to do. The scary thing for me always is, like if you listen to the Sean Ryan show and he had like that super bad chick on and she talks about sleeper cells
Oh my
and things
God,
like
so
that.
scary.
It's hard. It's hard to bet against that happening for me, and I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. I just think that there are a lot of enemies out there. There's a lot of people that are coming for us, and if you're going to ask me to bet on whether something big is going to happen or not happen, I'm going to say it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know when, and I don't know where, and I don't know what it's going to be. And to me, that's the harder one to solve for because it's more of an unknown and it's more of a randomized type thing.
Yeah.
So whether that's supply chains shutting down, whether that's a virus, whether that's, I don't know, tons of little bombs going off, all like, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be. And so that to me is like the scariest monster, where the rest is a little more predictable. That said, again, this is why I go back to like a survival kit instead of a first aid kit. Like, have the stuff you need where if something pops off and you're not home, you've got it in your car and you're good.
Yeah.
Right? You're not just sitting there with nothing and you're starving and you're thirsty and you're cold. It's like, it doesn't take, it takes like an hour to like, buy one of our kits and throw in some extra food and blankets and maybe a little more water and put it in a duffel bag and put it in your car. And then if something happens, you're so much further ahead of so many people and you're going to be able to navigate that in a much clearer way. And to me, that's like really where this all starts.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we are so accustomed, you talk about like the Amazon, like to just these modern conveniences, that like people can't even conceptualize. I do think, like I said, I do think COVID was a huge wake up call. It certainly was for me, just in the way that it was like, you're on your own, in a lot of ways. It was just like, you're on your own. You've got to figure it out. You've got to make decisions on your own. You've got to question everything. That's how it felt for me in a big way.
I think society is this like perfectly balanced thing. I always kind of make like a teeter totter, right? Like everything's perfectly balanced, and you get a couple things to start shifting, and then everything goes.
Yeah.
If for some reason there was a computer virus that shut down credit card transactions, well, maybe now you can't get gas or food.
Right.
So now you can't move and you can't eat. Like that one thing could then suddenly take a run on things, and then people start fighting over what food's left, and then you have people, once that food's gone, they're going to acquire it somewhere else, which is probably your house. I mean, it escalates really, really quickly. And so that's always the nervous thing for me, is we have this amazing society that's very sophisticated, but if it's like pulling one leg of the chair doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And that's how I think about it.
Well, and you think about too, one of the things that I don't want to say keeps me up at night. It doesn't keep, but like that I think about is the grid, like the power grid going out. And it's just like, this is like the lifeline for everyone, right? It's like, what do you do if that's gone? And that's something, because it's like the power grid goes down, everything goes down. Like everything just stops,
Yeah. I mean, it's very antiquated too. I mean, it was our power grid. If you talk to people that know that side of things, it's way overtaxed. It's way out of date, and it wouldn't take much. I mean, even beyond a couple nasty solar storms to wipe out tons of us and knock us back.
And there's also a lot of outside threats that are just, outside from just, how taxed it is and, big storms and stuff like that. It's like there are definitely countries that are looking to take our grids down. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and countries that have chips inside of the devices we're using to run our grid. Right?
Exactly.
So we're saying the same thing. I am completely with you. I think it's all pretty darn interesting. I went and bought a Starlink this year. I've got some electric generators here. I'm hopeful that if things really went down, that'd be something I could power up and communicate here and there. But I think about those things like, okay, so let's say the towers go down or the power goes down. Like, what do you do? How do you heat your house?
Yeah.
I just moved to a house with a wood fireplace and 10 acres. And a lot of that was around me being like, I want to be this person that can help people and take care of people. And if things get really gnarly, I know I can sustain.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that capability. You might live in a big city or whatnot, but I think it's something people should think about. And you're not gonna check all the boxes overnight. You're not gonna go out one day and go, now I'm totally prepared. But my hope would be that people improve their fighting position a little bit every day. Learn a new skill, acquire a new thing, maybe plant a garden, like whatever it is, just do those little things so you become more prepared every day. And I think that's the mindset people should have living in the world we live in.
Yeah, I love that. You also said that you live by the mantra, life is not a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you spoke to that. Like you can't just show up at the Super Bowl, right? So have you ever had a moment when that mindset pushed you to take a risk that you might have otherwise avoided?
I take risks all the time. I try to keep myself very uncomfortable. I mean, even starting Uncharted, I had some success early on in my life. I was part of a company that sold, and honestly, I mean, it wasn't gobs of money, but it was enough that like bought a house, could have had a nice job, and just been comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think I would have want to laid on my deathbed and said, oh, I wish I would have just gone for it and tried to start something. Right. So, the business is probably my biggest adventure ever, just keeping alive and growing it and working on that every day. And the tenacity to stay in the fight every day and keep building that thing. That's been a big adventure. I do a lot of backcountry hunting. I was just in New Zealand and South Africa with my friend Andrew Arabito. He's a SEAL. We spent a month down there, bow hunting and around some big animals, and not that it was like super dangerous or extremely gnarly, but get out there, get out to foreign places and see new things and navigate them and figure it out and challenge yourself. Like I really believe in that, whether it's wearing a weight pack on your run to make it a little harder, or going on a trip to somewhere that you wouldn't otherwise go, or starting a business. I think there's a lot of value in building up a resilience when you don't need it for the times when you do need it, right?
Totally.
And I try to do my best to live by that mantra.
I always say resilience is a muscle, and you got to continually work on strengthening it. Like you said, it doesn't just show up when you need it. Like you have to work on it every single day. So. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. You made me just think of a couple of years ago, I was on a hunt with my friend Brent Phillips. He owns a company called Softlead. He's a former Marine. And we were out in this hunt, and we had these grandiose plans of big elk and beautiful weather. And we're just in a rainstorm for days, soaked and sitting there. And we just sat there and laughed at each other, And he said, he's like, one of the things on the teams is like, you got to be with people that when it sucks, you can just laugh through it and have like that positive attitude to like keep going.
Yeah.
Like you want to be around those types of people. And I don't think that that's something you're born with. I think that's something that, like you said, it's a muscle. You build that skill.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot.
I love it. Christian, where can people go to get the supplies they need to be prepared in an emergency situation?
I'll say this. I mean, our website, unchartedsupplyco.com, we've got everything you want there. You can buy it all. We've also got in our blogs how to build your own. My mission is to try to equip people with knowledge and tools. So I do think buying our kits is the most efficient, highest quality way you can do it. But if you're a DIYer and you want to, take a swing at it, the recipe is all on the website. You can go check it out for free and go collect those things. We have a lot of brands on our website, whether it's, Garmin or, things like that to add to the products we make. But yeah, check out our website, start there. Tons of blogs, tons of great information. I'm really proud of the products we build. They're used by all the top people in the world. They've been reviewed by everybody, tested by everybody. I know they work. We're proud of them. So if you're in the market, give us a shot. I'd appreciate it. But
I mean,
also
who's
just
not
take
in the
information.
market? Like everyone should be in the market, right?
That's actually funny. I was just at GoPro Mountain Games last weekend in Vail, and some lady walked by, and I said, "Hey, you in the market for a first aid kit?" And she's like, "No," and I'm like, "Well, you are. It's
Yeah.
just maybe not today,
Yeah, right?
And she's like, "That's really negative." I'm like, "I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Like at some point, you're going to be in the market for a first aid kit. So whether it's today or another day."
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. I can tell you, I am heading on your website and getting one of your kits. I'm going to add to my filtration straws and guns and be fully prepared. But
Love it.
really appreciate talking to you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.